I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, has council had the opportunity to review the meeting minutes from August 15th? If so, I'll ask for a motion to proceed.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Motion from Robin, second from Mike. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Any changes to this evening's agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the set agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion from Mike, second from Rick. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Guests in open forum. Seeing no one for guests in open forum, we're going to move into committee reports. Budget and Finance Committee.
Excuse me. Budget and Finance met on August 22nd. We reviewed all the standard financials as we always do. Everything is looking good as we had hoped. We talked about utility shutoffs. 7 went to shut off. 1 was still turned off. That is a rental property that is believed to be vacant. And we covered several miscellaneous things: the red circle pay, general fund budget amendments, preliminary tax capacity discussion, facility bonding, and truth in taxation, the legislative change. And that was about it.
Okay, how about Excel Advisory?
I didn't make it.
Nope. All right,
Did that even happen?
Yeah, we did meet. There wasn't anything of real importance that came out of it. The community meeting breakfast is the 27th, I believe, of September in Monticello, so you should be getting an invitation for that.
Okay. Fire Board.
Fire Board, we met on August 21st. Everything's going good over there. We did, our typical payments of the bills and payroll. And really the only news to share is that we had 35 calls in July. About it.
All right, Park and Rec.
Park and Rec did not meet, but Josh sent out an email updating us on a few things, that the resurfaced pickleball courts were opened and have been well received. New lime was installed on the fields at the BAC, fields 2, 3, 4. Community park pavilion and playground equipment are looking towards a September installation. And the new improved sledding hill at the city park was raised about 8 feet. That was about it.
All right, how about Golf Committee?
Golf Committee, we met last week. Of course, everything is doing good there. We talked about, which is actually on our agenda tonight, some cart path improvements. It was kind of interesting because we were actually trailing the rounds because of the late spring, but now we have surpassed them by 1,168. So that's a good news. So people apparently like to golf in this heat. Concert of the Creek was on Friday, went great, really good numbers. I guess I don't know the total yet, but from being in attendance, it was a pretty dang good event, so
Okay.
that's about it.
Joint Planning. We just had an IUP, or is it CU?
I think it was a CUP.
Is it CUP, Jacob?
You had a
There's a zoning request, and then
zoning request for plat.
what? Yep, that took place at the township, so.
Yeah.
All right, Police Committee.
Police Committee, we met Friday, August 25th. We had an update on staffing, no changes, full staff. We had plenty of discussion, as you might expect, in the police world about the SRO topic, which has been kind of the newsworthy item. And I'll just gonna take a second just to give kind of a, obviously we're not in the SRO position right now, but just what that discussion, what it really boils down to is this new law that's gone into effect. You think of police officers have, certain permissions, powers everybody else, doesn't have. And what the new law basically did is when officers go into the schools, they don't have those protections that they do as a police officer. So kind of what is the nuts to bolts you know, what is it really boiling down to? And so why are agencies, you know, one by one, everybody's giving it to their legal and they're saying, well, you're, you know, if you don't have that protection anymore, that's really what it's boiling down to. So it's, even though you might see other distractions and things like that, that's why everybody's, freaking out. And so, so we had a lot of discussion about that. And just, as, you know, as just kind of what that could still mean, even though, Becker doesn't operate in the SRO for the, capacity for the district, that could still, potentially involve us, in a non-SRO capacity. And so what does that mean? So, so we had discussions about that. We talked about the, you know, there's been a transition or starting of a transition, at the county to move over to the Oracle Records Management System. That is still on hold. The body camera audits, we have that on our agenda, and then just some updates on some upcoming equipment. We're gonna have squad car purchase. We didn't purchase one this year. We try and rotate one every year, and then if, you know, we take a look at that 5th year, if the squads are still in good shape, we'll wait a year and continue the rotation. We did wait this year, so we do have one coming up. There is a model year push out on that, so it's gonna be a little bit later. Normally we try and get them, we've been trying to get them in the fall. But the next, one that we would be looking at, the model year, is gonna be pushed back, so it's, it'll be a little bit later, I guess, is probably the, also radio encryption, that is something that is coming, so, there is a cost to that, so that will be forthcoming as well. Talked about, motorized, bicycles, scooters, it's kind of a gray area in our ordinance right now. You know, we talked about, you know, the side-by-sides, four-wheels, things like that. Those we pretty well, you know, that's been going pretty good, but we're seeing more of the motorized scooters, you know, like the motorized pedal bikes that can go, say, 30 miles an hour and they're still zipping down a sidewalk. So what do you do with that? Is that, you know, plus it may be operated by a 10-year-old, you know, so, you know, it's kind of a gray area that we're, you know, is under discussion as far as how to handle that, so, more to come on that. Stats, we're running slightly ahead, from last year, so, that's all I got.
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission, we had, one item, and that is related to 8 Bravo tonight on our agenda, so we'll cover it then.
Okay. Any other committees? Nope. All right, Board Committee and Consultant Reports. City Hall / Police Department renovation project. Mr. LaRue and Mr. Ebensteiner.
Mayor Bertram, City Council members, on August 2nd, John McNamara and Paige Sullivan from Wold Architects were here to present kind of the final draft of the proposed City Hall Police Department renovation project. Following that meeting on the 10th, the estimated prices came back that were higher than originally talked about. And the working group's goal was to keep the project under the initial $6.8 million that was talked about in February February of this year, I believe. And so we went back, did some further revisions to the plan, and so John will be here tonight to present those. And then following John, Mark will give a kind of a high-level presentation about the bond issue for the project. That part is not up for consideration tonight. The only request for tonight is that the council approve the schematic design and approve final plans to be developed by Wold. They will then come back at a future meeting for the council to consider and then formally go out for authorized bids and obtain quotes. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Evening, Mayor and Council. It's nice to be back and kind of talk about the final phases of schematic design. As Greg alluded to, we did kind of our commitment during schematic design was to kind of vet out the right solution for City Hall and for police, go through an estimating process, and then come back with a solution that meets the budget expectations. And so the presentation tonight is we'll talk a little bit about the program, go through those floor plans in detail, answer any questions that the council has on that, talk about the budget and where we're at today, and then look for approval to continue on. So as a reminder, in order to hit that target budget, we're designing this to hit kind of that midterm proposed utilization based on the master plan that we did last year. And so that kind of envisions a solution for City Hall that adds, and kind of right sizes a few of the departmental areas. But much of the focus is on the police facility. And as we had presented in our last schematic design update, we came up with a good solution that tried to balance out not only the needs of the police department, but also provide some much needed space for the City Hall side and kind of improve that public lobby experience. And so we've modified those numbers a little bit without necessarily compromising what we were planning on doing for the police department. And so the schematic design proposal that we had previously, which is this presentation here, shows us infilling the courtyard right out in front of where we are today to create a new public lobby area, a new vestibule for the combined facility. Off of that public lobby, you'll have two opportunities to engage with city staff. One of them would be at your typical service counter for the City Hall side. And then on the right-hand side would be a lobby that you would be able to go into, a sub-lobby, what we call it, for the police department, where you could have those conversations with either the record staff or with a patrol officer or an investigator, either in that lobby space or in an adjacent conference room, so you can have more privacy for those conversations to happen rather than right out in the hallway. And so in order to accommodate this kind of combined lobby for police and City Hall, we're going to take over that existing space where the food shelf is, move the food shelf to the north side of the property to get some separation from that and provide some kind of front of the building access for the police department. We are anticipating renovating the entire office area for the police department to gain some space for some of those support functions for evidence processing, for locker rooms, and for some of the fitness space. We are locating the fitness space on the north end where the administrative offices are now, so that has better access not only for the police department, but also has access for the rest of City Hall as well. So we're creating kind of a secure line just on the other side of these doors in the training center where the old council chamber was, so that we don't have non-authorized folks in our police department area. The two additions on the building, one of them would be to right-size the patrol division and provide space for today and for the future, but also to add a garage onto the building. That garage would not only meet the needs for the police department, but also has some extra space in there for some of the city vehicles as well, along with room for growth in there. And so as we had kind of looked at the site, this would maximize the area where the garage is, so that's that blue area on the north side, so that would come up right on the setback for that property line to allow us to have a drive-through garage in that location. Again, just as a reminder, the parking for the food shelf would move back to the back lot here, and there's a separate project to do some improvements to that existing parking lot. But the main front parking lot would remain as is. We would pave those kind of existing roads up to that garage, but the access out onto Sherburne would remain as it is today. As we alluded to, we did do some estimating, so that mid-column there, which says schematic design, is where our estimator was suggesting that we would be, which would be at about $6.5 million in construction. We would still be carrying about $254,000 for furniture and technology. Fees and testing would be the same as what they were in the early pre-design phase at $554,000, and then an overall project contingency at $75,000. When added up, this does put us $550,000 over the $6.8 million that we had talked about previously. And so through our conversations with the committee, we identified that we would need to likely reduce some square footage on the building, and where could we reduce square footage without necessarily compromising the program on that. And so we identified that we would like to target about 500 square feet of finished space, and I'll identify where that is in a minute. That would save us about $135,000, and then we would change the garage from a drive-through garage to a just, you know, a garage similar to what you have but bigger with garage doors on there, and we would lose probably one parking stall in there by doing that. Utilizing the costs that we had from our cost estimator, that would likely achieve about a $540,000 savings, netting out about $675,000, which gets us right back on budget. So we take that $675 out of the construction dollars, adjust some of the project soft costs and contingencies, would put us right back at the $6.8 million that we had talked about before. And so what does that look like? So we came to the committee with a couple of suggestions. So those those boxes that we have shaded in there are the areas that we're targeting for reductions. We did look at some changes to the front lobby area, but the committee felt that the way that the lobby was designed with some of the features that we have in there was an area where we'd like to try to retain what we have there. And so we're going to take a modest amount of square feet off of the patrol area, still maintaining the offices and the collaborative area that we have in the patrol area, and then redo some of our circulation on the north side of the building to eliminate some additional square footage near where that staff entry is, and kind of relay out that middle area to just kind of clean up some of that circulation. And then the biggest change is going to be to take off the garage area, so we no longer will have a drive-through garage, but we'll have the space available on the site should that be something that the city wants to do in the future. But it doesn't really compromise the usage of the garage, because as you'll see in the revised plan, we are going to shift the garage slightly to the south to make sure that we have adequate space in the garage for our patrol vehicles with some future growth in there, and have a spot in there still for a city vehicle. One of the things that we do have in that garage is a caged off area for some evidence processing for a vehicle. So if that area isn't being used, that also is an additional parking space in the garage. And so it's kind of a temporary thing when they're processing some of that work in that area. And you can see in that center area, while we still have that hallway on the north side, we've eliminated and relayed out that center area to eliminate some square footage in there as well, without compromising the spaces that we have in the building. And so on the site, again, all that really does to change on the site is we're going to have a drive aisle that goes through on the north side versus going through the garage. And so there'll be some paving in that area versus the structure that we had. And so with those changes that we had talked to the committee about, that was the recommendations and the recommended floor plan that we are proposing to move forward with for the next phase of design. And we had shown kind of a rendering of what we expect the building to look like. What we're showing here is what we have estimated for the project, so we're not suggesting any changes to the exterior aesthetic for the building. So we are, again, expanding that front entry area into the courtyard. We are proposing to continue with the theme of clear story windows to bring in daylighting into that public space, and to anchor that new entry with a similar design element to what we have in the building now, but more prominent to draw people towards that new entry, and looking at ways to visually reduce the look of that existing entry through the use of some perforated metal panels on there to allow daylighting into those now what are going to be staff spaces versus the big glass entry that we have now. So we think that's a real simple way to maintain what's on the existing building without spending a lot of money to deconstruct that existing entry. The rest of the design of the building will be complementary materials with the brick and the glazed openings for the renovated area where the current food shelf is, and then the new patrol area, which you see subtly hinted to on the right-hand side of that diagram. So as part of the next phase of design, we'll continue to develop not only the floor plan solution, but also continue to work on the concept sketch that you see here. And so where we are at today overall with the project is we're at that bold middle point of our schedule, which is looking for council approval of schematic design today. With that approval and approval to move into final design, we would continue to refine that schematic design layout that we presented to you, working with not only the police department, but with City Hall as well. We figure that'll take a couple of months, which will put us at the end of the actual true design part of the project. We'll continue to meet with our core planning group, the building committee, to continue keeping them up to date on the plan solution. We will do another midpoint of design estimate, so at the end of what we call design development, which is where we've made all the decisions on the design, all the decision on the materials, we know the layout of all the internal spaces, we will do another double check on the budget so that we all feel comfortable that when we move into construction documents that we're still tracking with the budget that we had set at schematic design. And then once we understand that we're still continuing along the right track with the budget, we'll move into construction documents, through the winter from December through February, and then be back to council at the end of February, early March, with that kind of milestone of are we approved to go out to bid, which would then trigger the bidding part of the project and then eventually construction. So this is still looking like, if all goes well and we receive approvals along the way, that this will be a spring start of construction. There is some phasing that we have to figure out, which will also be part of the next phase of design to make sure that we have homes for everybody while we are doing the renovation work. And so we'll come and explain to the council what our plans are for phasing. That'll be part of the bidding of the project so that the contractors know what to expect as far as how to tackle this job. So with that, I would send it back to mayor and council with any questions and look for approval of the next phase.
Can you go back to the slide where, with the cost adjustments there? I'm questioning reducing that garage that much. It's probably the cheapest part of the building.
Which is why I'm using a lesser cost per square foot, just to make sure
Yeah,
we're.
but my point being is, I'm guessing that you felt you needed that much space for now and the future to begin with. 2,700 square feet's a lot to be taken off. And it's $500,000, but.
We did have quite a bit of discussion about that during our meeting, and can we make it work right now? We absolutely can.
And what's gonna happen in 5 years?
Let's hope we don't have 10 more cars. That's probably the easiest way to put it. It does accommodate both the police department and city hall and building official for now. And if we do get to that point, I think, if we have to put cars outside for the time being, or like myself and the lieutenant who take vehicles home, I think we're gonna be okay. So I think for the time being, this is a good solution for us.
One of the things with this, you get this picture up here too, as we talked with this revise here, if you remember the old one, I don't know if you had the old one, but it had the building kind of, when it was a pull through, it stopped at the, I think there was another one where it stopped at the end or something, but with this revision here, you could actually,
Continue with the garage.
you could build out if that was, like if you, of course you'd do more than one stall, but you, without having to change any of the other building, cause it could continue to go right along that, front patrol wall there.
Yeah, and we did discuss, and we can continue this through the next phase of design, where we could look to add an alternate to the project to see what it would cost to add those additional stalls on the south side. So it's not, we had talked about that as kind of the future thing, but it's, certainly if that's something that the council wants to explore, we can figure out what it looks like to add those stalls.
I would like to see that.
At this time.
How many extra office spaces is this gonna have?
On the city hall side?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna move the two that we have over here currently, so the planner and building official would move over. The conference room gets smaller.
IT manager gets an
And-
office.
Right.
Does it?
As does Lori. So,
Oh, yeah.
we're giving office space to people we already have on staff. There's no additional vacant space for future on the city hall side. It's just getting offices for everybody that's here.
Do we have any, will we have any space that's available in the future? Or are we gonna have to, are we gonna be looking at building again?
I think this solves a midterm solution.
Yeah, this was the 10 to 15 year versus the 30 or 40 year. I guess it was the-
One thing we did talk about too is we don't know what impact technology is gonna have in the future. Are we gonna be able to contract out some services and not have staff? So the need for staff is probably the highest right now than it's going to be 20 years from now.
I find that one hard to believe. Okay, I'm good with that then. I just don't wanna, in 4 years, be talking about building again.
So is that, I know we, in the committee, we've talked, you know, scope creep and things like that, is having that, the one addendum, is that I mean, that's.
I'd like to try to keep the alternates to the minimum that we can, so that we're not confusing the bidders. As long as we have a fairly simple couple of, if there was a couple of things that we could think of during the next phase of design that would make sense to put out as add alternates, we could explore that. The simplest one is adding, you know, those 2 additional garage spots, because it's either there or it isn't there.
Would you, do it as an alternate to basically just continue down, like,
Correct.
go with the modified design and just add 2 more stalls, or would you could do it to the original design where it's the pull through and all that?
My recommendation today would be to just add those 2 additional ones, continue with this solution, but just add 2 more to the south. To do, the original solution is basically we're having them bid 2 different solutions, which sometimes is confusing as to what should be in the alternate and what shouldn't be. So if we can achieve what we need for the number of cars by just adding those 2 additional ones, and that, you know, solves a need well beyond what we have today, that would be my off-the-cuff recommendation.
Well, I'm happy where this turned out. I've been on the committee with lots of folks and lots of meetings, and, you know, we, lot of different direction, and I think where we ended up, pretty happy with it. So I will make a motion to approve. Let's see, the schematic design, budget, and authorize Wold to complete the, building design.
I'll second.
Motion from Rick, second from Becky. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Great,
Thank you, John.
thank you. I'm sure we will be back with updates along the way.
We look forward to it.
Yes.
Rezoning of multiple parcels to R3. Mr. Sanders.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. For you tonight, we have a rezoning of 8 parcels, they're all within the same area, to R3 zone from R1. So as you can see in the RCA, the exhibits that show that, there's 8 of them right in a row. They're on south of Edgewood and just behind some of the commercial quarter there, adjacent to First Street. These parcels are currently zoned R1, but the future land use map, again, is shown in the exhibit 1.3, shows these as high density. And statute does allow the city to initiate ordinance amendments to bring the properties into compliance with the comprehensive plan. And in this case, these have been there for a long time. This probably should have been done previously. There were other iterations of the comprehensive plan that had these zoned as R2 and others, but they were never rezoned. So the city initiated that at Planning Commission. We did hold a public hearing. There were some comments from the public regarding traffic, what's this gonna cause with traffic? Well, there is a road that goes through there or is dedicated to go through there that would go up to Edgewood to help with circulation. We also addressed other concerns about market rates and other type of housing. There was some concern about low income or what many people term as Section 8 housing. And then one question there is one individual property owner that owns a property that's kind of sandwiched between these that did ask a question, his realtor, regarding how they market the property, which will provide them what information they need to do that on what types of housing are allowed within that district, should you choose to permit the rezoning. So as you can see, also in the RCA, there were several of the zoning housing types that are allowed there, just for reference. So we did also receive a email from one of the property owners that owns 7 of the 8 parcels in favor of the rezoning, so he did support the rezoning of those. So with that, we are seeking and Planning Commission did approve via resolution PC 2316, so they recommended approval at that zoning meeting on August 28th. So with that, we're seeking for a motion and a second approving ordinance 274 second series and a motion and a second approving the ordinance 274 second series summary for publishing. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Maybe just make a comment. I did have one of the property owners on the circle there. One of the property owners there, so it'd be one of the properties that abuts the one of the 340 property, had reached out to me and was concerned about his property value should apartment buildings or something go into those properties there. Just as kind of a due diligence, I reached out to 3 different realtors that I knew, and just showed it to them and said, okay, here's what we're looking at. If you were selling this house, would you would this create an issue? One thing to note, to maybe address that is, if you notice where the gap is there, and we've talked about this in other times, is we got those big power lines running through there, and they pretty much separate the Laura Circle properties. They run through the 0340 property there, and they pretty much are in the backyard of the Laura Circle properties. So in talking with the realtors, they had expressed that if you were to take an apartment building and build it right up to somebody's house, that's gonna that could negatively affect their property. But with those power lines running there, that creates an almost about as permanent as you could create without having an actual permanent structure, because those are big 345s, they ain't going anywhere. And you can't put anything, not even a parking lot underneath them, because you can't put anything metal. So you couldn't have a parking lot, you can't have a garage, you can't have really anything that's there. So any structure, regardless of where you would put it, could not be really close to those homes right there. And as most realtors would tell you, if you were to look out and see a field versus see an apartment building, what would you rather see? Of course, you'd rather see a field. So no, but it's also not your land, so. There was one that was probably the little more skeptical, and as I pressed her a little more, I see what would it look like, for dollar wise, and she said, not thousands of dollars or anything. It wasn't. And the other 2 were, once they understood, especially with that buffer being there, they didn't feel that there was going to be a drop in the properties, and so just
Yeah, that
some
power
extra
line pretty
diligence.
much separates it from everything.
It does.
And then we did have one of the business owner, there was one of the, I don't know if the owner operates a business.
She does own the business
On First Street there, so it'd be one of the properties that would be, abuts it to the back there. I know she was concerned about, potential foot traffic coming. She doesn't have a business that would, would want a lot of foot traffic coming through her business. And so she was, concerned if you put an apartment building there, that's obviously a lot of people. People, tend to take the shortest path, which could be right through your business. So not something we would address with zoning tonight, but just something to, think about with screening, if this would ever come forward as
Yeah, and
an
there's,
apartment project in the
yeah,
future.
or privacy fences and things of that nature. You can definitely isolate the businesses from the R3 zoning.
One other thing that I'll mention too is we did get some questions about, well, what's coming in, what type of housing. Again, there's no current development plans that are happening here, so there isn't any sort of proposed housing at this point. It's just what's allowed in the zoning district. So we did clarify that with the individuals at the meeting.
And then the traffic, any apartment would have to have that road finished out to Edgewood there. It's currently buffered off, but it would have to finish that out to Edgewood, which would, you'd win some and lose some on that, because obviously a lot of the traffic's gonna go to Edgewood, but then again, you'd also have more coming through the neighborhood. So I mean, it's it's gonna be a horse apiece. I don't know what it weighs out to exactly, but,
It at least won't dead end somewhere and then have a bottleneck problem.
If nobody's got any other questions, I make a motion to approve ordinance 274, second series.
Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Robin. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Need that for publication too?
Yeah, the
Yes.
second series.
Motion to
summary.
approve 274, second series for publication.
Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Robin. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Pebble Creek Cart Path improvements, Mr. Kua.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about Pebble Creek Cart Paths with you this evening. So as part of our kind of ongoing addressing of some of the original infrastructure at Pebble Creek, we've had previous opportunities a few years ago to address a really dilapidated stretch of cart path along Highway 23 on hole 13 of the championship course. That project, which was budgeted for $15,000, we were able to accomplish a really nice, important stretch of repair. So on that same vein, in 2022, we had budgeted in our CIP another $15,000 to kind of take another bite at the apple in addressing some cart path deterioration priorities. So after many meetings with staff and walking the property with golf committee as well, we're looking at addressing a lot of the path work in close proximity to the clubhouse. And I'll walk through the specific areas of improvement that we're looking to take on with this. In the packet, you've got some photos that we'll kind of address in their Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, and Area 4. So beginning with Area 1, so this is the section of cart path that goes right by the putting green from the cart barn exit. So we have 70, soon to be 80 golf carts that come in and out of the cart barn every day, and that path is unfortunately too narrow. So you can see along the putting green that you get substantial rutting because it doesn't allow for two-way traffic. So one of the first parts of this particular project we're looking to address is widening that path to accommodate two-way traffic. The second area in Area 2 is creating more pathway space right along our clubhouse map or our course map area. Before the round, we get a lot of people that are practicing, hitting putts, waiting for their tee time, and it gets really congested around that. So we're looking at removing kind of a straight line of turf around our putting green along that pathway to allow for face-in parking. So doing that will allow us to create specific golf cart parking spots for those that are kind of in the staging area. It'll be helpful for tournaments as well, as we're trying to manage all the flows and cart usage for those events. So just kind of taking out that stretch and adding about 12 feet of pavement depth would accommodate that additional parking, as well as just freeing up our carts to pass along our clubhouse kind of in those high traffic areas. The area number 3 is heading up towards the driving range from the putting green. So as you can kind of see, we're heading up towards the garbage enclosures, towards the driving range. It would replace that whole path that leads up there. That part is just really broken apart and deteriorated, as you can imagine. It gets a lot of cart traffic as people are preparing for their round, and people are kind of traversing across the property. Area 4 is at the top of the driving range. So you can see the picture where the bench is. This is right on the back of our driving range. There's a lot of rock that's in that place, and it's not very useful space for us. We've got large oak trees that drop a lot of acorns, and it makes it, well, Concert at the Creek was a great example of that. It's a very tough area to clean. So we'd be looking to pave that area and also install and line stripe cart path or golf cart parking in that spot too, which will have the added benefit of keeping carts from parking as much on the lane that leads to the Pebble Creek Maintenance Facility. So just kind of, in all of these areas are also curbed in the quote, which will be helpful specifically around the putting green, because there's no natural curb there, so a lot of people will go past our stakes and park closer to the green than they need because they're trying to get out of the way of this traffic. So we're kind of leaning into a lot of the way that our property is used by our golfers, as well as creating some curbing to allow for better water flow and kind of restricting traffic in areas that we're trying to keep them out of. So those are the main areas that we're looking to address. We did reach out with Hanson Paving, had the most favorable quote. We reached out to Erickson. They did not supply a quote, but based on some other projects that we've seen on this particular pavement, their quote came in at $11,950 to accomplish the paving in all these areas, which we felt was really, really good pricing. The CIP was written for $15,000, so we would look to, we put in the motion and second request to not exceed $15,000 because we would look for other patching projects to get right up to that budget line for this project while we have them out on site. Those kind of, if this gets approved, staff would kind of identify the remaining, how that remaining $3,000 would be spent on, based on proximity and access for them. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding this project. Otherwise, looking for a motion and a second allowing Pebble Creek Golf Club to engage Hanson Paving for the cart path project in an amount not to exceed $15,000. And I'd happily answer any questions you might have.
That seems really cheap. Is there
what we
any
thought.
reason or?
No, not that we're aware of. Perhaps they're just trying to be really competitive and, you know, get into our city's portfolio. But yeah, we were very, very impressed. We've seen other projects where another company has bid similar, and you know, they were 20 to 25% cheaper than what we had seen on these other projects. So it's encouraging. It's 2-inch depth, so it's very much appropriate. They're not cutting any corners on any of the quality or the workmanship on it. So we too felt like it was a pretty appropriate price.
Have they ever done any work at Pebble before?
No, not at Pebble Creek.
I work with them quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yep. Good company. Well, I'll make a motion to allow Pebble Creek Golf to engage Hanson Paving for the cart path project in the amount not to exceed $15,000.
I'll second that.
Motion from Robin, second from Mike. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you. Excel leachate trial agreement, Mr. Knutson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Standing in for Chris Listen, so bear with me. Leachate, it's a fun topic to get into. We've talked about it before in the trial phase that we're looking at. We deal with, so for the audience, we deal with Vonco right now. We handle some of their leachate, and we used to handle GRE's leachate as well. We do a little bit of that through Vonco. They handle their, since they've capped their landfill, but we handle theirs as well. So this process is very similar to that. Excel reached out to us with their decommissioning. They've got ash landfill that produces leachate. It's an open source cap right now. So There's quite a bit of water that comes through that process. So when they reached out to us, we were a little bit apprehensive to discuss it with them because they've never done anything with this leachate. It usually goes to their retention basins and basically evaporates, or they use it on site for watering and wetting down their ash or some of their old roads. So with that, we reached out to SEH and you guys gave us approval to go ahead and do a preliminary study of what the water makeup is. And so after all of that work, Excel has paid for all of that engineering study. We've come to this point where the water is very neutral, and we feel that it wouldn't impact our treatment facility negatively. So with that, we would look to do a 2-month test project with Excel, where they would handle up to, the initial agreement calls for the first 30 days to handle 31,250 gallons of leachate on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. We would set up the parameters that we could take up to 1 truck an hour, and they'd have to discharge their truck over a period of at least 10 minutes. So they wouldn't just give a huge surcharge to the plant and wash out any of our bugs. So that's pretty important to that. So they've agreed to what's being proposed here. And if everything goes through, should you guys move forward with this, that first 30 days we get favorable results and it's positive to the plant. We would allow them to slowly increase the discharge that we would receive up to double that amount, or 62,500 gallons on a daily basis towards the end of the trial. We'd ramp that up weekly over the next 4 weeks of that process. In the agreement, it calls out that we have absolute control over this. We can shut them down immediately. We take 1 truck and it doesn't work, or we have a problem, we can shut them down, and Excel knows that. So we're really trying to put something out there to try and be a good partner with them, to try and help them out, and see if we can even make this thing work out. So should we get to that point, right now we've increased the charge per thousand. We're charging them $60 per thousand. That's about 35% higher than what we would normally charge, because nobody's treated this water. We don't know what we're dealing with for sure. So we just wanted to guard against that. We also put a caveat in there that they will pay a daily surcharge if we have to add any nutrients to the water, because it's pretty clean water. So again, if our bugs don't have anything to eat, it kind of disrupts the harmony out there at the plant as well. So by taking this in, if we've got to kind of add something to the water, chemical to the water to feed the bugs a little bit, they would cover that fee as well, and it's in the agreement.
Feed the bugs, I know, that just sounds
You do,
awful.
that's, carbon dosing or dirtying up the water is what we would need to do. So that's part of the agreement as well, that they're willing to go through. If this goes through, our whole goal is to take all the data that we can research, because we'll be testing the water weekly, and Excel will be testing it, sending it to their labs to test and providing the results for us. We'll be monitoring everything at our plant, and if it works well, we'll take all this data, work it through the winter months. They're kind of off season because they wouldn't discharge anything out November through roughly April, and bring it back to you guys for more of a longer term agreement like we've done with Vonco on their leachate. So whether it's short term or long term, the premise of all of these conversations with him have been very clear that leachate is low on the list. Our priorities are our residents, our priorities are our businesses. So if something changes and we see significant growth in a residential area and we can't handle this, we'd shut them off immediately, even if it was a long-term plan. So we've laid that groundwork with them very, very clearly in all of our meetings that we've had with them, so they understand that we're trying to go into it eyes wide open and to get them to really give us as much information as they can. And so far, they've been really good. They've been very appreciative of that. The plant manager has actually reviewed this and signed the agreement to show that they are serious in trying to partner with us, and that's what's in front of you tonight. So it's been about 4 months to get to this point as far as the SEH work and working with staff on both parties and their engineers as well. So with that, I can answer any other questions that you might have.
What's the maximum amount of discharge that they would have?
If they could, they put a pipe in the ground and give us.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yes, they would give us 100,000 gallons a day if we would allow them to do that.
Okay, so let's say we allow them to do 50,000 gallons a day. That's what the number was, right there.
We would do, this would call for a max up to 62,500 gallons.
Is that ever gonna solve their problem completely?
It will once that, if their plan goes through, and this is the ash landfill for unit, it'll stay in as an open landfill until unit 3 is shut down, and then it would be capped. And once it's capped, then the water collection will be greatly reduced. So they won't be producing this much water or have a need for this much water. They won't have the cooling water or anything like that. So the landfill then will reduce it down, but then you're talking 2031, 32-ish, depending on how long that runs in and how much water that we could take in that time frame. We could come up with something and we shut them down immediately because we just don't have the capacity. So there are discussions, I don't want to go into great detail, but there are discussions on a capital plan with them, should it trigger something from a planned expansion, because they have to get rid of this somehow and they can't just put it into the river. So they would have to truck it to Met Council. There's agreements like this in place. I believe Fergus Falls has one, Moorhead does stuff like this. So we're not new in this, and we're partnering and using some of those agreements already in play to kind of model ours after. But to your point, Mike, we couldn't handle what they would want to give us, and we're controlling those numbers. They don't get to control those numbers. There could be a proposal that they would want to put a hard pipe in the ground, and we control the valve. And they know that they put that in the ground, and we could shut them off 2 days after it's live. We've again laid all of this out because they're great questions. It's questions that we've asked as staff, and they're conducive to that. But they're in tune to almost paying a long-term capital plan, almost like an extra fee, so we can fund a capital program if we need to do a planned expansion in the future, so we can help them get to where their needs are, because their cost of trucking is huge. We're trying to keep it in the simplest thing for the city so we can pivot immediately and shut them down very, very quickly. So.
I don't have a problem with it. Doesn't one of those companies take stuff up to St. Cloud too?
St. Cloud takes some stuff, yes. I know, I think Vonco actually trucks some of their stuff up to Von, because we can't take all of their stuff in. Theirs is a little bit more unknown and a little potentially nasty. This is pretty static water as far as what we're seeing, so.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2388, authorizing the temporary acceptance trial wastewater handling agreement between the City of Becker and Xcel Energy.
I'll second that.
Motion from Robin, second from Mike. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colbinger Skate Park Replacement Design Work Authorization. Mr. Knutson.
I think Chris wanted to be absent tonight, because this one is maybe causing a little controversy, but I'm just kidding. Chris has football with his son, so that took precedence. So I'm standing in for him on this project. So tonight in front of you, over the last couple of years, as we kind of navigate our CIP and looking at our overall parks, we've tried to come back in and say, okay, what are new amenities that we need? What are things that we can add to enhance our community? And what are things that are existing that need to be refurbished, repurposed, or done away with? And one of those is the skate park. So the genesis for us being here tonight to talk about the skate park is that we've put a number in our CIP that's a significant number for our skate park. It does get a decent amount of use, but I can't quantify the use for you. I can't tell you how many people use it, how many days a week it gets used, or anything like that. There is a lot of traffic over there, and it serves another element of our community that maybe some of our other parks don't serve. The concern that we have as staff, as we have to do our park inspections on a monthly basis, the existing skate park, it's safe to say it's either at or near its life expectancy. And to put that up or to leave it up for future years, we might be able to get another year, maybe 2 out of it, but that's about it, because then it becomes a liability on our part, and we don't want to be in that position. So with that, Chris has done some research, and we looked at the new skate park that's in Elk River. There's one similar to that in Waite Park. So we just thought we'd reach out to the folks that did the one in Elk River, just to say, what's the design work? So as we looked at last year coming into this year, we split that number that was in the CIP and said, take some of that money out to maybe we can get some design efforts to look at what would be worthwhile in our community. Should we do this or not? What would it look like before we would take anything out to bid? So kind of that first phase of what would this look like? And that's really what we're here to do tonight. So to looking at that and saying, if we engage Spohn, to do this. I believe their number was just under $14,000. But it accomplishes some of the goals as far as, getting the site survey, some drawings, getting some of the design work, getting some community involvement, sitting down and working with Park and Rec to look at this and say, what would you want to see in your community? Greg brought up a great point of a tier 1 or a tier 2. I'm like, I don't even know what the difference in that is. And here it comes down to height requirements and whether it's supervised or unsupervised. Our goal would not to be, have staff out there, watching a skate park. The nice thing about the skate park, it's in play. You touch it, make sure it's good to go. You inspect it monthly and you're done. You don't have to spend a lot of time with it and allow the kids to use it. So really tonight, we were looking to say direction to go out for design on something like that, but I think it maybe is a bigger philosophical question of, is that the direction you want to go, or do you want us to take a deeper look at that park in general, to use that to go back to some of our master planning and look at that? Because as we're up against our CIP or the budget time, that number's in there for a skate park next year. And if we're not going to go that direction, we'd either look to reallocate that number or repurpose that, or take a step back and say, do you want to build like for like? Do you want to, pursue that, or what direction do you guys want to give us? Because I think we're kind of in this limbo right now. What's the best approach for maybe that piece of equipment or that park in general? And that's what we're here to kind of get your thoughts on.
Well, when I drive by there, I see kids out there pretty regular. And how old is that right now?
Well, it's been around a long time. Now,
I absolutely think that it would be used.
Mm-hmm. That initially started caged in over at the community center.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's been here a long time, and the intent was, how are we gonna control that and who's got access, and yeah, it was a mess, and then we moved it, Porta-Pad and moved it over there.
I
So,
drive by there a lot, and I
Yeah.
see it used all the time, so
yeah,
I think it's well worth doing.
I would prefer kicking this back over to Park and Rec for a grander master plan of that space. I think this is in a pivotal area of our community, and it has lots of ability to be something greater. I feel like we're just replacing something that we already have existing there, skate park for a skate park. But that, when I look at that park, I kind of compared it to the Carl E. Johnson Park that started just as a swing set over there, and now look at it, it's phenomenal asset on that side of the business, of that side of the community. And I think something of that magnitude could be here, but I don't want to just put something there because that's what we already have there. I mean, staff has done a wonderful job reviewing what is needed at the community center and making that outside space just very family-oriented for all ages and sizes and families. I think I would like something of that laid out for this portion of the park, because it's viewed and it's used by those that are at the school. It's used, it's right behind our main grocery store. I think I would like to see something a little bit more of like what it's going to be when it grows up. Like what else can we add? You were gonna go, I'm sorry.
I guess I had reached out to Chris earlier.
Yeah.
He was on the RC. I
Yeah,
figured.
he and I talked, so I was aware of that. Yep.
So I had reached out to him. He was, maybe a little frustrated. I probably wasn't the first person to reach out to him, I'm guessing, but I do understand. Staff's frustration is you're saying, look, this is we're the ones who have to maintain it. This is at the end of life. We're telling you got to do something with it. Mm-hmm. I understand that. I've hung out many hours at skate parks when I was a kid. I appreciate them. Mm-hmm. I don't want to give the impression that I could vote for a $250,000 skate park. Okay. So I guess I'm afraid to even go this route, because this kind of puts us down that road, and usually this would lead to that. And I guess if I'm not at the point of voting for that, I don't see how I could vote for this. Mm-hmm. I'm not at all opposed to, we can go back to, I understand, nice things cost money. Mm-hmm. We talked about possibly, some fundraising. But I don't know how you're going to fundraise anything close to making a dent on that. Maybe you can, I don't know. Right. But I guess, just in its current plan, I wouldn't, be comfortable voting for it at the end product, so I wouldn't wanna vote for this tonight to even, start on that route.
From, you guys sit on Park and Rec, and the thoughts of bringing something back and kind of maybe redesigning the full park. We know parking's an issue over there. Staff, we've
That was
talked
gonna be
about.
my next comment, like,
Yeah.
this is already such a disaster with baseball and it's
And
tough.
we've talked about that, the chief and Greg and myself and a few other staff members who got together and we talked about that because it's still an ongoing concern. We struggle a little bit with solving a school problem, with our dollars, but we're,
Right.
there's other things coming with that as well, because we get it and we'd like to address it. But what I don't want to do is cause, dissension amongst what we're trying to do, because I think we've got really good momentum. We've done not to pat ourselves on the back, we've done a pretty good job with hearing what the community had to say and building some of the stuff that they've wanted. And I mean, the splash pad today at 11 o'clock, there was 15 kids over there, which is awesome, but again, we're continuing to build on that. So we don't want to distract from anything. And if the takeaway is to take a bigger study and look at it, I think we could even do that in the next couple of weeks with this Park and Rec meeting and get direction and take another stab at what we're looking to do if you'd like to see that. But what I don't want to do is try and push something down if we're not prepared for it, or to go out for a design work on a $200,000 build that is not going to get off the ground.
Right.
So
Yeah, this is a very spacious park.
It does have a lot of potential, like you
Yeah.
said. I feel like, we could do a lot of stuff over there.
Like that, the old hockey rink, is that, what is the,
Status of that, or-
yeah, the lifespan of,
those boards have been replaced several times. It's in decent shape right now. The staff went through the last 2 years and replaced as many boards as they needed to. Usually we get a church group or a volunteer committee to come through and they'll do paint on it every other year as we need it. That's something that we could look at. It's a good point that you bring up though, because there's a lot of labor that goes into that.
there's a lot of
amenity.
labor in this park, yeah.
100%, and it's so, just the weather has not been helpful to us. Keeping a sheet of ice out there is really difficult, for a very short period of time for a small number of people. But do you have the appetite to take that down? It wouldn't be my recommendation to take it down because, again, it serves a purpose in the middle of winter.
Well,
There's kids
doesn't
that are out there.
don't the hockey groups use it?
No, we don't let them,
Don't, oh, okay.
cause they'll
Too hard on it.
they'll book all the practice, they'll take it out for practice time.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of times they complain that our ice isn't good enough for what they're trying to do. So you'll see some kids that play hockey that come up there and play, but there's
Pretty
no,
much all you see is,
there's no organized practice or youth teams using that, to my knowledge.
okay.
And Bart would share that with us because they have to use the warming house and rent that out, but, and it's too hard by the time you plan for it, the weather turns and, or you get snow and, last year was horrible. With the amount of snow we got and the length of time,
And it was all wet snow.
we barely get the streets clean and maybe people are mad because we didn't have the rink ready to go the next day, so. It's something that, again, maybe Park and Rec, we could talk about that whole park and look at that, unit by unit and make a recommendation on what's going there. I would stand here and say, I think the skate park is an important feature in our community. I think it serves a demographic and a group of people that doesn't get served anywhere else, so I would be a proponent of doing something to bring it back, because I think it is a very well-used and a very good piece of property. It's just tired, and we need to do something with it, so. If that's the direction, we can take that back. We can meet at this month's Park and Rec and look to bring something back very, very quickly, to still turn it around before final budgets are set for the years, the upcoming year, and look to do some design phase stuff in the off-season, so we're ready to go in the spring.
Yeah, we could send an email out to the members,
Okay.
informing them that we're
Yep.
gonna be talking about this, so if they come up with any ideas.
Chris and Josh and I meet on Thursday, so we'll have this discussion and kind of set the tone and get something out, Mike, like you're suggesting.
Okay, that's the direction I would give, is that,
Should we just pull the item then? We don't wanna take a vote on it?
No motion? Okay. All right, thank you.
all right, thank you. Administrator and staff reports. Purchase agreement for Potter Investments, Ms. Regal.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For you tonight, we have a purchase agreement for Potter Investments. Todd Potter, owner of Potter Investments, is wanting to purchase 5.63 acres of land adjacent to his current property. This parcel is city-owned in our business park. Based on the approved price of $1 per square foot in our industrial park, that brings the sale price to $245,242.80. This amount will also pay existing tax assessment, which will be taken out of the sale proceeds. There is no subsidy hearing required on this transaction. The city attorney has reviewed the attached purchase agreement and recommends proceeding with executing the agreement with Mr. Potter. I'd be looking for a motion and second to approve Resolution 2386, authorizing the purchase agreement and sale of property owned by the City of Becker to Potter Investments for business expansion. And with that, I'll stand for any questions. I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2386, authorizing the purchase agreement and sale of property owned by the City of Becker to Potter Investments for business expansion.
I'll second that.
Motion from Becky, second from Mike. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Acceptance of body camera audit. Chief Balloon.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Council. As you know, back in 2017, the City Council authorized the use of body cameras by the police department. And by doing so, we are also required to complete an audit every 2 years, statutorily required. So in 2019, we completed the first audit of our cameras with the state auditor. And then in 2021, we completed one with a consultant, Lynn Lemke Consulting out of Burnsville. So this year, our third audit, if you will, we completed, starting at the beginning of the summer, was completed not all that long ago. So we've gone through the process. By the way, she works for Burnsville Police Department. Burnsville is one of the first agencies in the country to actually authorize the use of body cameras back in early 2000s. So her experience is pretty, she's got a lot of experience in dealing not only with audits, but the programs itself. So so people understand what we're looking at and what is evaluated under state statute are the data classifications, retention, access by subjects, the inventory that we have of the units themselves, agency use of the issued portable recording systems, authorization to access data, sharing among agencies, the audit process itself, portable recording system vendor, which we utilize Axon, public comments, which we went through that process back in 2017, and of course, policy. Now, interestingly, this year going through the process, there was one discrepancy that was noted that was unknown to us at the time. But I did, backtrack a little bit to find out how that happened. We are missing part of our policy that dealt with the compliance portion. Specifically, how we're conducting compliance audits within the department. Well, we didn't know about it, so nothing changed. So we're still, I actually am still conducting the audits of each of the officers. So despite something being taken out of our policy, which we didn't know, we're still moving forward like it was still there. So it's a kind of a minor issue for us. So when she did notify me of this, that we are missing this much of a policy, it was put right back in within 10 minutes and we're fine. But that was back at January 5th. I went back to look at when that was actually omitted. It was January 5th, 2023, during an update from Lexipol. Hard to say if it was them or if it was us that actually omitted that. I'll say it was them. But nonetheless, it really doesn't mean a lot. It just makes sure that the wordage is actually there to ensure that we are being compliant and that I'm doing my part as the chief to make sure the officers are following the policy. So that was actually put back in place. We are fine. The next step in the process, obviously, is the acceptance by the city council of the audit itself. It does get published on our website. That is a requirement as well. And it also goes to a slew of legislators that are part of a certain number of committees or whatever it is, just so they're aware that we've gone through the process. So I don't know if there's any questions with that right now. I can tell you this, I didn't put just so you are aware, when we did the audit with the state auditor, it cost us about $4,500. It's just so we could get a baseline back then. But now that we utilize this consultant, it's about $750. So just so you know that, cheap, fairly quick process to utilize her. I contacted her in January to get on the list because she gets booked up really fast. So she can only use so many vacation days to take care of these things during the year, so we're pretty lucky. So with that, if there's no questions, all I'm looking for is a motion and a second to accept the findings from the body camera contractor, Lynn Lemke Consulting, as identified in the audit report.
I have a question, doesn't really pertain to it, but how long do you have to keep that information?
Great question. So part of the data retention is statutorily identified. So take a traffic stop as an example. So the officer will create the video of a traffic stop. We're required to keep that as long as nothing happens and it's just, let's say, a ticket or a contact with the person. We've got ours established at 3 years. I've actually established our process for retention farther or longer than we are required to do so. Best part of that is we're not the ones retaining the data. So Axon retains the data. So we can keep it forever if we wanted, or they would allow us to. The other hand, so that's only about 3 years, but if it's a use of force scenario, we're required to keep it indefinitely.
You are, that's what I'm
So
wondering.
depending on how the officers categorize their videos, evidentiary in nature or training or something like that, or it could be an unspecified thing where I just bumped it. Then it might be a 30-day thing, but there's specified timeframes for each type of video that we create.
And that's part of your audit, is to make sure everybody's following.
Exactly. Not only the time frame, or they're categorizing things properly, but they're tagging them with case numbers and stuff like that, that they're actually activating the cameras when they're supposed to. So if you're making a traffic stop, there better be a video that's attached to that versus no video. So, or there's gotta be a description or identified reason why the video is not operating at that time. And we've not incurred or had that happen. So our equipment works great. We just re-upped that last year anyway, so we've got fairly new equipment that we're utilizing. So again, just a motion and a second to accept the findings of the audit report.
I make a motion, we accept the findings of the audit for the body cam.
Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Robin. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Cannabis use on public property. Mr. LaRude.
Mayor Bertram, city council members, during the last session, an adult use cannabis bill was passed by the legislature. That bill allows local governments to make decisions regarding where they want to allow it within their own jurisdictions. We talked about this during the August 2nd executive session, and council gave staff direction to have the city attorney draft an ordinance that prohibits the use of cannabis products on city-owned or leased or controlled properties. And so the state law also allowed for the city to regulate it on public accommodation property or property available to the public. Our ordinance is not proposed to do that. It is strictly limited to property we own or control. And so that is the ordinance that you have before you tonight. So I will stand for any questions you have.
Could you maybe give us a couple of examples of like the public-owned property that?
So it would be all city-owned property, so the golf course, the BAC, the BCC, all parks and trails, sidewalks. This ordinance is also written that Snuffy's Landing is included. That would be under 1B. It's city-owned land above the ordinary high water mark, so Scott was thinking of that when he was drafting the ordinance. So so if we lease property, and I don't recall that we lease any now, but if we do, it would be prohibited on that by this action, even if somebody owned the underlying property.
Wasn't here for the last discussion about like where you guys landed on it. I mean, we think of a lot like beer. I mean, you can't walk down the sidewalk and have a beer. You can have a beer and, we're not touching, private businesses. I mean, if a business wants to set that up, that's still there for them. If an existing business wants to offer that, there's regulations in place for that. We're not prohibiting that, but, we're kind of going the same route as beer, so I think that's.
Yeah, and the main focus is to keep it away from children, walking down the sidewalk, you could be walking with a kid. you know, and they have secondhand smoke is just as bad as smoking a joint, so.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 273, second series, related to cannabis use in public property.
Second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
And I'll make a motion adopting ordinance 273, second series summary for publication.
Second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you. Consent agenda. Mr. LaRude.
Mayor Bertram and City Council members, item for consideration on tonight's consent agenda include the hiring and termination report for Becker Community Center, Pebble Creek Golf Course, and Community Development. Resolution 23-85 approving the 2024 City Council meeting schedule. Approved noise exemption application for Sons of the American Legion Squadron 193 for their event on September 30th. Approve a estoppel certificate for the wastewater treatment facility solar project. Approve Red Circle pay for Pebble Creek cook positions. Approve service contract with Johnson Controls for the yard waste site gate card access system. Approve the Just Transition Fund Coal Communities Get Ready Challenge grant application. Approve partial pay request number 3 to Minnesota Paving in the amount of $203,110.60 for the 2023 street improvement project. Approve partial pay request number 9 to R.L. Larson Excavating in the amount of $156,285.15 for the 2022 County Road 53 street and utility project. Approve partial pay request number 3 to R.L. Larson Excavating in the amount of $1,581,801.78 for the 2023 Business Park Pump Station Improvement Project. Approve partial pay request number 4 to Latour Construction in the amount of $22,674.26 for the County Road 53 to Edgewater Water Main Improvement Projects. And I will stand for any questions you have.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you. Payment of the bills.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
I'll second.
Motion from Robin, second from Becky.
Low in the first place.
Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Anniversary announcements for the month of September. Julie Bleasy is our city clerk, HR safety and risk management manager. She is celebrating 10 years with us. Rhonda Klein is the kitchen supervisor over at the golf course, and she's celebrating 4 years with us. Chief Balloon is celebrating 17 years with us. Lieutenant Lindblom is celebrating 10 years with us. And Sarah Schaefer is our administrative assistant over at Public Works, and she is celebrating her 5th year with us. So congratulations to those employees. Does council have anything else for the betterment of Becker? If not, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Rick. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 6:18.